Welcome everyone to the Freedom 365 YouTube channel. I'm here with my team and we're here to speak about a topic that we feel is very important for not only the Black community, but other communities as well. So we want to talk about family and finances. So yeah, as I said, I'm here with my team, Josiah Yankson and Ross Williams. Gentlemen, how are you guys today before we get started?
Doing well. I can't complain.
Same here, beautiful day.
All right, sounds good. Sounds good. I want to start off by talking about some of the experiences that you've either had or heard on this topic. Of course, we're all obviously Black. So I want to hear what your experience has been and what you've heard about how finances have been talked about, the importance that's been placed on it in the family setting. So whoever wants to start first, you could just chime right in.
Some of my favorite experiences were in college, so I'm gonna pull from that for this example. One of my friends in college, they had a lot of money. Their family came from money, so as a young adult, he also had a lot of money. And one of the things that I saw that was interesting with the way their family dealt with the money versus the way my family or a family that I knew from back home dealt with money was the early conversations about money. They spoke to him about money from a very young age. I didn't hear about money till I was a little bit older, but he had the knowledge of money and how it works as a tool from a young age. And I think that allowed him to make better financial decisions as he got older.
Well, with my family, at least, especially growing up, my mom would always push spending money. On her birthday, she would want expensive colognes and nice bags. I would be like 12 years old, like, Mom, I can't buy you Givenchy, So that's been my experience. And then, so I never had money growing up, essentially, because I thought money was something to spend. But as I got older and I started to be around people who have money, I realized money is something you're supposed to invest instead. So that's been my experience.
According to the data that we found, if you compare education of finance in the Black family to the white family, you'll actually find that about 58% of Black families actually educate their kids about finances. So I just want to ask you guys throughout this question, were you educated on finances growing up? And if so, what type of education did you get? And it could be in your household or it could be in the school system. So what has your experience been with that?
That's a very good question. Growing up, money was kind of a topic that you didn't really discuss too much. It was kind of a taboo topic. But in the school system, at least, I discovered the use of money very early on. So about first grade, second grade, I used to sell pencils for like a dime, a nickel, because downstairs the lunch ladies were selling fruit snacks for about 25 cents. So I realized I could turn pencils into fruit snacks by way of coins, by way of money. So that was one of my first experiences with money, was using it as a means to an end, using it as a way to get fruit snacks. And from then on, I realized money was a tool, and I used the abilities that I had or the skills that I had learned to sort of acquire more money so that I could use it as a tool.
What age is this again?
First grade, second grade, about 6 years old, 7 years old.
So about first grade, second grade, you started developing that entrepreneurial mindset pretty much. Is what
Absolutely.
Okay, so Ross, I'll pose the question to you. But that's interesting to me because my story is pretty similar to that. And of course, you all know the story, but I'm talking for the viewers as well. We all grew up together. Well, Josiah and I grew up together, and I knew Ross for a long time as well. But when growing up, we found that we found different ways to make money at a very early age. And I don't know if Josiah remembers back in elementary school, we would, sell different things like candy
Of
and,
course.
all that. And we would do that, and we weren't really thinking, I don't think we were really thinking, along the lines that, we want to make a lot of money, but we just like the idea of making the money and not having to rely on your parents. Right? Am I right? Would
Absolutely.
you agree with that? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So a lot of, I can see how a lot of, you pretty much expose yourself to uh, maintaining finances, growing finances on your own. Ross, what has your experience been with that? How did you um, begin to get educated?
I hate to sound like an echo, but my story was pretty similar since I was really young. Selling candy, selling anything to make extra money. And my mindset was more like, school lunch, I don't want that. And I realized if I have money, I could pretty much get whatever lunch I want, could buy the things I want. So it was more so just a means to an end. So I figured, do anything I can to make more money. But I didn't really learn about saving and investing until I got to, I would say, the end of high school or maybe beginning of college. So that's my experience.
So it makes me wonder, and of course, there's only three of us here, and my experience is pretty similar to the two of you. Um, with us seeing a statistic like that, what do you think is the type of education, financial education, that Black families give to their children? Do you think it's to the extent of investing? Is it saving? Is it creating a budget? Planning for retirement, planning for college, or maybe what we have for you, prepare for college. So what type of education do you think it is, or maybe what you've heard?
As the statistics say, 58% actively teach the next generation, their children, about finance and financial responsibility. The other 42% do not. And so, speaking on the 42%, I believe they teach their kids surface finance, which is don't spend all your money and save your money. But that doesn't really mean anything. These are phrases that we hear all the time, but that doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't really have the weight behind it. It doesn't have responsibility behind it. It's just words that we hear all the time, and we know they're right. We know those words are correct. They make sense, but what does it actually mean? How do I put that into effect? How do I go from not having much to having a lot and being responsible with that? And so I think having the real conversation is what's important here. I think parents do have conversations with their children about money, but it's not like the stat said. They're not actively teaching their kids about finances. So I think that's where the problem lies.
You say the real education. So what is the ideal education that one should be getting from their family
Let
as
me
growing up?
let me chime in really quickly. I think all parents, they want their children to have a lot of money. That's why they send them to school. That's why they want them to go to college. But what happens is they don't really know about money themselves. So when you say the real financial education, I think it refers more to investing. Instead of trading your time for money, it's having your money making more money. So I think that's what real financial education is about.
I agree with what Ross is saying. The parents themselves don't even have the real education when it comes to finance, and that's no disrespect. It just some things you can't know on your own. Some things you have to learn from somebody who's a professional. Feels like psychology and stuff like that. Like when you're getting married, you go to see a marriage counselor, and they teach you forms of communication. Now everyone thinks they know how to communicate, but there are things that you need to learn from a professional, and I think money has that because just because you grew up, you had money, you spent money, you bought a house, doesn't really mean that you know how to effectively use your money. Like Ross mentioned, having your money make more money for you. I think that's lacking in a lot of our communities.
There was a statistic that I looked at not too long. Actually, it wasn't a statistic. It was about planning to grow the Black community, and
Mm.
it talked about how one thing that Black families are super strict. Maybe strict is not the word, but they place a high importance on education.
Mm.
And So our way of growing wealth is through education, and that is something that I've definitely seen in my personal experience growing up. Before I toss it out to you all, what the article brought out, I believe it was through Market Watch. What the article brought out was that with Black families placing such high importance on education, of course, higher education, um, it also means that you have to pay for it somehow, right? And with them placing that high importance on education, they don't place the same importance on how to pay for schooling. And what's that mean? It means debt. It means debt. It means you go into college, and some go as high as getting a doctorate or becoming a doctor, and they get out and they're in loads of debt and they're trying to pay it off. So they start off life, in essence, behind. And it talks about how this is a problem specifically to the Black community, and how if you look at other communities, they place importance on building wealth, not necessarily through education, but building wealth through mindset, number one, through businesses, community businesses. That's something that's talked about within the family. So I just wanted to know your experience and your take on hearing something like that, on the importance of education in the Black community. And of course, we are not saying that you should not go to school. We're not saying that you shouldn't go to college, and go as far as you can with college. But what we're talking about here is the strategizing how you'll pay for college, and strategizing in a way that it doesn't put you behind in life. So, gentlemen, you could chime in on that.
Absolutely. I definitely see that. In regards to parents sending their kids off to college, they don't really send them with the plan. They send them with debt. And that's a huge problem, especially after college, because we're supposed to be looking towards the future. And if you're thinking about it like an investment, you're investing into your college career. You take out debt to do that. But then when you get out, the career path that you chose might not necessarily be the right path in terms of paying back that debt. So for the parents that do that, we're not talking down on them. We're not bashing them or anything like that. My whole thing is, once you know better, then you do better. So for those parents, this is what they know. They know taking out loans to pay for things. They know taking out debt to accomplish certain goals. That's what they know. We're just here to offer a different look on that. Maybe there's a different way to do it. Maybe taking out debt is not the right approach. Or maybe if you do it, there's a way to do it so that you're not in debt for the rest of your life, or you're not working a job only to pay back that debt. We're here to offer a different outlook on that, a different approach to that. Maybe taking out debt is not the right approach for you. Maybe it's not right for you and your situation. Maybe there's a different way to look at it. And that's what we're saying. We're not bashing anyone for taking out loans, but maybe there's a different way to look at it. What do you think, Ross?
I agree with you, definitely. Knowledge is power, so I'm for education, but I think the problem is we confuse education with knowledge a lot of times. You don't necessarily have to go to school to be educated. You'll look, sometimes there'll be a plumber making $1 million, but the Black community won't respect him because he's a plumber. Meanwhile, someone will go to school and have $200,000 of debt, and they'll praise him and respect them. So I think our problem a lot is with our mindset on what we respect. You get what I'm saying? So we respect someone who's a doctor or a lawyer, but we don't necessarily respect someone who's wealthy that doesn't have that image. So we got to shift our focus more so from just looking at like exterior things and realize what's more important is wealth.
Yeah, y'all bring up some very good points there. I think it's another thing that's important to note is knowing that you're going in college. And let's say you do take the debt, because I don't know your personal experiences, but I'll be open with mine. I went into college and I came out with debt.
Same here, man.
And I felt like I was behind, as I'm still paying it off as we speak, but very close to finishing up. First coming out, you feel like you've been set back. You brought up how we've been trained pretty much. We've been trained to look at different trades, such as plumbing, as you brought up, Ross, as something that is pretty much inferior to becoming a lawyer or a doctor, or the same types of careers that we're pushed towards naturally. And I'm not, like I said, it's not about whether one is better than the other. There's room for doctors in this world. There's room for lawyers in this world, but there's also space for trades. There's also space for even going into areas that might not require college and taking on debt. But those are not pushed at all. That whole idea is something that's pretty much foreign. I would say to the Black community specifically. I can only speak towards that, but I'd like to hear from experience. Do you guys have um, any friends or any family friends that you've seen who took the trade route?
Oh, definitely, definitely. I know a couple people that work in construction. They did their OSHA training and all of that stuff. And they're making pretty good money. As a matter of fact, no debt behind their name because, they didn't take the college route. But they are making quite a lot of money in construction. To add to Ross' point, I think it is a problem that we do look down on the blue-collar workers because, let's be honest, without the blue-collar workers, we wouldn't be able to live the way that we do today. We have plumbing, we have construction, we have electricians. These are the kinds of things that we rely on every single day when we wake up. And to look down on the people that do that kind of work, especially the ones in the Black community, it's kind of hurting ourselves.
With the trade thing, I'm not 100% sure if this counts as a trade, but I have a cousin who decided to become a trucker instead of going to college. And they paid for him to get his CDL, all his certifications, and when he was done, I believe it took less than a year. He came out making six figures. So in less than a year, he had a job making six figures. So over the course of 4 years, he could have made 400K, while someone like me,
as a trucker,
as a trucker, he's driving a truck.
Wow.
Someone like me, I went to college for 4 years, came out, had debt, and then had to look for a job that wasn't even going to pay me six figures. So it's just something to look at when it comes to trades.
Yeah, it's very interesting to look at. Booker T. Washington, he might have not been the first to propose the plan of African Americans finding trades, but his part of his plan when he started Tuskegee, it was that you go to college, but you also have a trade to fall back on. I think that still rings true today in a way, because, although it might not be that plan specifically, I think this whole idea of belittling jobs such as that, like you just said, your trucker friend is making 100K, no debt, right? A plumber could start a plumbing business and make millions. These trades are things that we need in our everyday life. Somebody has to do it. What does that mean? It's in high demand. So when we start thinking that way, we start seeing the importance that these trades have on our lives. We shouldn't belittle it, clearly, right? I wouldn't belittle someone who's coming out, of having their CDL license and they're making 100K, no debt. I'm not going to belittle that. That's a high paying job. That person is stable, I'm sure. Well, assuming that everything, all their finances are in order, that person should be a stable human being financially. So yeah, this is very interesting to look at. I think I'm going to backtrack a little bit into real education, because what we preach here at Freedom 365, we talk about things such as saving, budgeting, planning for retirement. We teach what we feel are the basics of personal finance. And we want you all to grasp that concept, and we go deeper. Basics. So we're talking about budgeting. We're talking about handling a budget. We're talking about building up an emergency fund. We're um, talking about planning for retirement. We're talking about how to save up for a home. Did you guys learn these things growing up?
Not really. No. I've heard of budgeting. I loosely kind of knew how to do it. Saving up for retirement, nah. Saving up for a home, nah. It was always save your money and don't spend your money. That's what you really heard growing up. And like I said before, those don't really mean anything unless there's a plan behind it, which I didn't have growing up.
Same here. When I got out of school and I just got hit with taxes and everything, I was completely confused. And I was angry for a while because I was looking back like, man, I was learning algebra and calculus, and now the stuff that I really feel like I should have learned, I had no knowledge on.
That definitely resonates with me. You pretty much go to, for someone who takes the college route, you go to college, you finish college, you come out with debt. We talked about that. But also the adult life kind of smacks you in the face in a weird way,
Absolutely.
right? So now
It's
all of
true.
a sudden you're like, oh man, I gotta handle this. Like let's say you get that first job. Now it's like, okay, well, what do I do with this money? I wanted to make the money, but what am I gonna do with it now? Family's not teaching the basics that we teach here, and that we're trying to teach to our community, such as budgeting, putting together a proper budget, and sticking to it. How to even get out of debt. A lot of people don't even know the strategies to getting out of debt. You know, life really smacks you in the face, and I've seen so many times where people don't know how to handle it, and it messes with not only their finances at times, but it messes with their mental. It really messes with their mind. I haven't really looked at um much data on this, but just from hearing experiences from friends, who came out of college around the same time as myself, uh you see that a lot. So what is your advice? This question, I'm gonna ask Ross this question, and then Joe, you could chime in after if you have something to add. What is your advice to someone who is going into college? They may be ready to have that fun that you're gonna have in college, which you should be having in college, but they're also a little anxious about what's gonna happen uh, through college, maybe accumulating the debt that they might accumulate. Hopefully, you're not, um, and then also getting out. Ross, what would you say to 18? What age do you go into college? 17, 18? A 17, 18-year-old who's going into college.
I would start by saying this. I can definitely relate to coming out of college and feeling like confused and not knowing what to do with life. And what I would say to the 18-year-old is don't expect college to prepare you for adult life. I think that's what all of us expect. Like, we went to school our whole lives, we went to college, and then now you get out, you think you're ready. But that's not the truth. You have to take it into your own hands, and you have to take matters into your own hands to prepare you for life after college. So what can they do? Learn a skill, one, I would say. You can't really fall back on your degree in the workforce, so I would suggest learning anything like video editing, Excel, anything. And then also just try to stay mentally tough. Like, coming out of, like, going through college and after college, you're going to feel like you have no idea what to do. But as you get through it and as time passes, you're going to learn more and more and more. And eventually you're going to look back and realize, like, oh, like, it was worth it sticking through it. So that's what I would say. Like, and when you're in college, on the whole topic of trying to have fun and feeling anxious, I would say definitely have some fun in college, but don't make that the main point. Make sure your number one thing, is balance. Exactly, balance it out. But make sure your number one thing, like your focal point, is getting through school and trying to better yourself. So that way you're in a good point after you're done college. Right. So the fun has to be secondary.
Oh, absolutely, I agree with that. Balance is key because we find in college we have so much free time, or more free time than we had in high school. And sometimes we don't know what to do with that free time. We end up doing the wrong thing with that time. I definitely believe in balance. And for the high schoolers that are watching this, the best advice I can give is to do well in high school, because the scholarships that you can get, you won't even have to worry about these problems about paying your way through school. The scholarships, they'll pay for you. So you'll actually have money in your pockets. You won't have to worry about any of this. If it's too late for that already and you're already at the stage where college is around the corner, make sure you're still applying for scholarships, because there are still scholarships that can apply to you. Also, make sure when you're in school that you're talking to everybody, because relationships are key. When you get out of college, you never know who you're going to run across. You never know who you're going to need to rely on. And if you made those relationships in the past, you made those relationships in college, when you get out, you're already set. And lastly, one thing that I definitely recommend that I wish that I took advantage of when I was in college is internships. Applying and completing internships. Those are huge, because you never know. You do an internship here, you might get a recommendation for a better company. You might have a job guaranteed at that company. You might even develop skills at that internship that you can put on your resume to get any job that you want. So internships are huge. I wish I took advantage of those when I was in college. And that's one thing that I can definitely say will help you a lot in your college career.
Let me chime in on that really quickly. Because that internship thing, I definitely agree completely, because I had no internships at all coming out of college. And what happens is, when you come out of college, your first job essentially ends up being your internship. So you're going to get hired as a worker, as a professional, but you're going to be making mistakes that an intern would make. You know what I'm saying? So
Absolutely.
To avoid all of that, get your internships out earlier. And then on top of that, having an internship could lead to you getting paid more when you get out of school, because then you'll have some experience.
Absolutely. And you know what's crazy? Some jobs, they require you to have a couple years experience before you can even get the base level position in that company. So some people wondering, how do I get 2 years experience when I've only been out of college for a couple months? Internships, that's one way to do that. You have that internship on your record from your sophomore year to your senior year, or your junior year to your senior year. That's your 2 years right there. And you're ready to start at whatever company requires that.
Yeah, great tips, great information. I don't want to neglect our high school audience, our teens. So I'm gonna throw out this question: what advice would you give to a teen who's watching? And by the way, for the teens who are watching, I'll tell you one thing: you are in a far better position than I was, because I definitely was not thinking about any type of finances at that age. I was thinking about making money, but not thinking about how to manage and maintain my finances.
Absolutely.
You're in a very good position being here. What do you guys have for that person in high school, or even before that, who's wondering, who's curious just about, financial literacy and how they should manage their finances, the little income that they might get, or educating themselves so they could, in the long term, know what to do. What is your advice to someone in that of that age group?
That's a very good question. That's a very important question as well. I always say, the older you are, the less mistakes you can make when it comes to money. The younger you are, the more time you have to make mistakes, because you have a longer time to, be able to correct those mistakes that you made. But the fact that, the high school audience, the fact that you guys are here listening means that you won't be making those mistakes to begin with. So like Brandon said, you're on the right track. You're way ahead of us. And that's wonderful, because our goal is to empower the next generation to be better than us anyway. In high school, your main focus is to get as many A's as possible, because A's get you paid. And I make sure the high school kids that I speak with, they know this, because when I was in high school, I wasn't worried about getting A's. And so when it came time for the scholarships, I got the medium scholarships. I didn't get the amazing scholarships that would have given me a full ride to whatever university I chose. I got the medium scholarships where I still had to put money on top. And that can be a source of debt that you don't want going into your college career. You don't want any debt. You want to make sure that all of that is taken care of. And the best way to do that is to get as many A's as you can, because I always say A's get you paid.
Ross, before you you come in here, that's great information, because what that does for a student it teaches them that they very early that the idea of investing in yourself. Now, you might not be able to invest in yourself monetarily at this point, but what you're doing is you're investing in yourself with your mind. That's the best way you can invest in yourself. When you invest in yourself with your mind, putting yourself, at an opportunity, giving yourself the opportunities to do the best you can, and seeing that return on investment come graduation day, where all these scholarships are pouring in. That's something that is well worth it.
Yeah, just to echo off of that, I know a lot of times in high school, everyone focuses on the SATs and the ACTs, but what I'm going to tell you is to focus on the PSAT. And why this is important is because the PSAT is what decides how much money you're going to get in scholarships. So I remember when I was in high school, I think I took it sophomore year, I was thinking, I shouldn't have to worry about any of these tests till I'm a senior. So I rushed through, did horrible, while my classmate actually studied, took it serious, and then I think when they announced the results, they were like, oh man, I got a $20,000 scholarship. So I was upset, of course, because it's like, I didn't know. So I'm just telling you this from my perspective, what I would go back and do differently. So I'll say definitely pay attention to that test. And then also I'll say with the little bit of money you do have, like just practice saving from now and putting money away. Because at the end of the day, wealth is a mentality. So if you start developing the discipline and the habits of putting money away, later on when you have more money, you'll be used to it, and then you'll have money aside to invest.
Listen, great points from the both of you. We preach exactly what Ross just said. We talk about building the wealth mindset. That's what we're focused on this channel, because we don't want to see you make the same mistakes that we've made. So you being in this channel, it makes us happy, but we're here to make you happy in the long run. Guys, thank you so much for lending me your time. We don't usually do videos together, but hopefully, if you guys like this, we'll do this a lot more. We'll do a lot more collaborative videos, podcast style videos.
Definitely.
This is Freedom 365. We're signing out.